Your first writing, your first posting, it's all cringeworthy. It doesn't have to be perfect. So just do it.
Hey there. In this episode, we talk all about podcasting, what makes a good podcast and a good host. So, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, or maybe you have a podcast and you're just looking for some good tips, this is a great episode for you. I was joined by my friend Greg Wasserman. He is a relationship broker, and he believes that life is about time and relationships, as you never know where one conversation may go. As a strategic connector, he helps unlock new opportunities by turning relationships into revenue. He has experience in SaaS companies, digital media, and podcasting. We had a fun conversation. I hope you enjoy this episode. Greg, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're kind of like a professional podcast guest. You've been on a lot of podcasts.
Working in the industry and not having my own, I love guesting. But as we've joked offline, it's like, all right, I get to see everyone's system and their process, and it helps for me coaching and creation and joy.
Yeah, you create lots of content and put it out into the world, mostly in the form of writing. When you think about your body of work, how would you describe it?
It's interesting to look at how my system has come, right? So it started off as just like, let's consistently post on LinkedIn, and that's where I live. And then it became, it wasn't joyful. It wasn't easy to do. Like, I have to think about, like, what am I writing every day? I don't care about numbers, but just the process of it. And then once I've figured out, like, hold on, every Monday is 3 podcasts I recommend, so I can always be listening to podcasts. And that stemmed from working in the industry. And then Tuesdays is like, how do I give back? Like, that's who I am. It's like, how do I give? What's the point of having connections? It's having pointing of a network if you're not able to A, stay in touch with them, and B, connect with people. And then it was just a matter of like, well, I got 3 other days. What are the other 3 days? What do I want to talk about? What do I feel like anyone that's following me should find valuable? And if they do, great. If not, it hits or miss. I don't care. It's not about the downloads. It's just the process of just getting into that habit, consistency, which most of us struggle with, is consistency.
So, yes, I agreed. It is challenging to remain consistent. So, how do you come up with your ideas that are worth sharing every day?
How does most people, I mean, if we think about it, and this is what I love, life is about time and relationships. I love just talking to people. If I could just talk to people all day, that's what I do. Because any conversation you have with a person is a completely different perspective. Like, you and I we could have been twins living in the same house and still had very different perceptions and perspectives of the world that we've seen. And so the inspiration is easy. The more people you talk to, the more you're like, oh, something someone said created a thought, or something that someone said created a deep dive that you want to go into. And I'm like, great, I'm not a writer. If I sat down and try to write that, my therapist always is like, Greg, if you wake up in the middle of the night or you're struggling to try and sleep, just start writing. And I'm like, but then I'm looking at a screen, or I have to turn on the light and start writing this. So I use voice memos, and I'm like, great, I can lay in bed and just leave myself a voice memo that goes to an app that when I wake up, all my notes are there, and I'm just able to go and organize it into the thoughts. But you're walking, you're out and on the dog, you're in the car, you're walking your dog, like, all these things and all these moments give you inspiration. Most of the time, most of us do nothing with it because we realize, I'm driving. What am I supposed to do? How do I write this? Voice memos. Just start rambling, start giving yourself whatever those thoughts are, and you can turn that into the content that you need later on. And that's the way I do it.
So, what tool do you use that transcribes your voice notes?
So, full disclosure, my last company that I worked for was CastMagic. So it's an AI content repurposing tool. So, of course, being the head of relationships and brand ambassador and all things but engineering, that is a tool I know, love, and use because it allows me to set up anything I want. So for this podcast, I'll go ahead and take the RSS feed from here, load in there, already have a workspace set up on like all the prompts that I would need to extract. So then all I have to do is just edit the content from there. So for my voice memos, do the same thing. Ramble, turn it into the content I need, and then just decide like which pieces of these content do I want to post? Do I want to turn into what lived outside of my thoughts?
Is there an article or piece of work that you wrote that surprised you in some way because of the feedback you got from it?
Yes, but I can't tell you like off the top of my head, like what, but it's always interesting whether I guest on people's podcasts or I write on LinkedIn to see once your content's out there, who's it resonating with? Who's enjoying it or what kind of feedback? So for me as a guest, nothing's better than going, someone hits me up on DM going, I heard you on Kate's show and what you said resonated with me. And like, that is the greatest gift because as a host, you're always dying for feedback. You're like, I'm speaking to the ether. Like, it was just Greg and I talking right now. I have no clue who's listening. So you want that feedback. But as a guest, I don't get it that often either. So for both of us to be able to get that, I then go ahead and that becomes a post going like, someone heard me on Kate's show. That means that Kate's adding value. If only one person heard it and they provided that feedback, that is incredible. So those are the things I'm always looking for.
So, has there ever been a time obviously, you've been doing this for a while, and you've built up that muscle around consistency. How long did it take for you for it to become so much of a habit that it just went from this discipline of doing it every day to, "Oh, no, this is just what I do," and there's just no more thought around it? And I ask this because there are so many people that overthink their work. They don't wanna share, it's not perfect, it might not be the right idea, and instead of thinking, "Oh, but I can post something else tomorrow that could be completely conflicting this idea, and that's gonna be okay." So how do you do that so that someone listening that is, I want to do what you do, but they can't get out of their head and press publish?
The answer to your question, like at what point did the switch flip for me to going like this just became second nature and I thought about it? I don't know. I can't remember that exact moment, but what keeps it easy for me to go is also what I coach everyone on. It's like, if I post something today and let's say 1,000 views you got, guarantee you most people aren't going to remember what you posted. And if you can go ahead and repost that in a week from now, even if the same 1,000 people saw it, most likely they're like, oh, or oh, there's a great thought. Like, most people are going through so many interactions, so many pieces of content that they're consuming on a daily basis to actually remember that what Kate posted today and what she posted a week ago are the same thing. You're not. And that's the other nice thing about content creation is you're not going to hit the same people. So you have no clue if I posted a week ago or today, who's seeing that. And the other side, if you add another layer to this, is repetition. So maybe you saw Kate's post last week and her post again this week, same post, but it finally clicked for you. You're like, I needed that repetition of hearing Kate's words 2 times for me to go like, you're right. Or maybe you're in a better place than you were last week that you are now. So for anyone that's listening, just go ahead and post. Most people aren't going to remember it. We joke about this in the podcast industry. If I look at your first episode versus you're now over 100 episodes, people are going to go, it's cringe worthy at the first episode. Don't listen to it, right? But like, we all joke about that. Your first writing, your first posting, it's all cringe worthy. It doesn't have to be perfect. So just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Nike's got the greatest line. Yeah, just do it.
That's right. So you're in the podcast world, which is so funny because I laughed when we originally met because I said, wait a second, this is what you do. You help people with their podcasts, generating great content, and you don't have your own podcast. You're like, yeah, no, I'm just the guest on everyone's podcast. So let's talk a little bit about in the podcasting space. It is such an interesting space right now. There are so many podcasts. Lots of people are starting podcasts. And for somebody that's thinking, oh, it's too late, there's podcasts about everything, I can't start one. Is there still room for new podcasts?
Everyone that's listening, the answer is yes. And for those people in the back, the answer is yes. For anyone, I will scream this as loud as I can. it is valuable to have a podcast. There's no saturation. If we want to go into deeper why I believe that, it is all comes down to strategy. So most people don't make it past 8 episodes. So if you just have the strategy and flex the muscle of head going like, I'm going to do this, you will be better than most people who quit right away. If you have a strategy of like, why I'm doing this, what's the purpose of this, which most don't, you'll be better than most that are quitting and just continue to do it for the sake of just doing. But yes, I believe there's so much value in podcasting. I mean, look, it's bringing us together as a conversation, which gets so many more people to listen and hear what we have to say. But even if you and I, once again, we're twins, are saying the same exact thing into the mic, what you say and who resonates with you versus who may resonate with me may have some overlap, but we'll also have differences. So if you think about that from your own creative outlet, you will find your own individual people, even if they're also Kate's people, even if they're my people, you will find individuals who will gravitate towards you because that's a special sauce, like you. And so there is no harm in jumping in, having your own podcast and getting that story out there, but have a strategy. And there's so many different ways to think about strategy.
Ooh, okay. So let's dig in a little bit to strategy because I am curious of all the podcasters that you work with, what are the biggest challenges that they have, and what are you really supporting them around the strategy so that they're able to create a really great show and resonate with the right audience? And it turns out the way that they really want it to go, right? Everyone has starts a podcast for a different reason. And so, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing with your clients that are coming to you for support on their podcasts?
The mentality. So there's 3 big questions podcasters have. Basically, it all boils down to these 3 things in my mind. There's more, but like 3 biggest ones. How do I get more distribution? So how can I get seen and found more places? How do I grow my audience? And then how do I make money? And then you reverse those. It's like, oh, well, in order to make more money, you need to have a bigger audience. In order to have a bigger audience, you need to be in all the places in some regards. And the biggest thing that most people get hung up on is that third one. How do I make money? And the way most podcasters think about making money is sponsorships and ads. Now, my background for anyone listening was in advertising. I'm an ad salesman, right? So like I literally got paid thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go out there and find advertisers with agencies to advertise their products or their services wherever I was working. One case, it was in podcasting. That's my zone of genius. Like that is literally my dedicated job. Most podcasters like, I want to sponsor. I would just love for this show to be sponsored by someone so that I got paid for all the work I'm doing. But your zone of genius is not what I literally was getting paid as a career to do. So why would you focus your energy on that? Most of the time they get they get bogged down on that instead of how do I be a better host? How do we create better content? How can I have better guests? What is the value of the guest that I'm bringing on? What is my actual business? And when you think about all those things, the sponsor, the advertiser, it fades away. And you actually get to the core of why you're doing this and how you can get it better. And then the other piece too is, are your audience, those that listen, actually we'll go audience because it's not just about listeners, right? Like that's what's so amazing about podcasting is you and I could speak right now and anyone that's listening, great. But anyone that then you take this and you repurpose this into a blog, into a newsletter, is still going to consume our thoughts well beyond just the medium of podcasting that you are trying to force them into. So for me, it's all a matter of, great, let's repurpose this. Let's build your audience wherever they are. But is your audience used to, quote unquote, buying from you? Have you actually set them up in a way that if you got a sponsor who's probably going to go to you, hey, Kate, I'm going to sponsor your content, but doing so, I need to show an ROI. Like, will your audience, you could say yes, my audience matches what your brand does, but will they buy? You'd be like, I don't know, but I think so. So have you actually started priming your audience to make an acquisition? Those are all things that podcasters aren't even thinking about. You could start today. We're recording this on Riverside. If you want, you can go, hey, this show is brought to you by Riverside. Here's my affiliate link. Anyone that's looking to get into podcasting, there you go. It's literally you practicing, how do I do a host read ad? How could I help an advertiser? So that when you can go and actually get an advertiser, you can show them this is what it sounds like. That's where most podcasters are getting hung up. They're getting hung up on the details of monetization and not on the details of this is a core piece of my business. How do I make the joy of what I mean, right? Creating. I am doing this business, whether it's a solopreneur or a small business. I am dedicating 9 to 5. We all know it's more than that. So call it 60, 70 hours a week, right? On this job, on this career, on whatever I'm doing. That podcast is a part of that. It's not its own standalone. I'm bogged down. I've got to do this. No, it is part of that entire flywheel. And that's where most podcasters are missing out.
Yeah, I almost feel like when someone starts a podcast, especially to support their business, there are so many ways to collaborate with some of the other projects that you're working on. That's what I do with the other podcast that we have, Lead with Culture, that I do for the business that I run. And we use, oh my gosh, we use so many clips from the podcast in our sales process. We repurpose a lot of the stuff we're doing. We also invite a lot of different guests to come on the show, which opens up a lot of doors and opportunities for us because we're inviting CEOs and different leaders to come on the show. And so I always look at it as okay, your podcast, this is the purpose of your podcast and the message that you want to share. And then what else? Like, how else can you use it in some of the other projects that you're working on? How can it support some of the other work that you're doing, whether it's whatever, the business that you run or other creative projects that you're working on? How can it support? And I think there is so much more opportunity. In fact, when we got off the call, when we originally chatted, you were just throwing out a bunch of ideas and I was like, oh, Greg, okay, stop. I got it. I can't do all of these things yet, but all really good ideas that really helped me see what this podcast could look like from a different angle, which is awesome, which is why I think it's important for people to have a third party come and look at the work that they're doing because they are going to see it differently. You're too close to it sometimes. I love that you shared podcasters should be thinking about or could potentially be thinking more about becoming a better host, finding better guests. What does that look like? We talk a lot about that on this podcast, right? The creative process and how do you get better at your craft? How can somebody who is listening that's thinking, oh my gosh, I'm mostly thinking about like the strategy and the building of the audience, all the things. What are some things that someone could do that to help them assess where they are right now as a creator and what areas they may need to improve on?
Listen to other shows. That's usually my first homework assignment for people. I'm like, whether you're starting a podcast or you've already been doing it, if we think about just the nature, we don't have 28 hours in a day. So if I'm dedicating all this time to creating, in your case, a podcast, right? So if I'm spending this time on the creation process and the editing and all that stuff, how much time are you actually then a captive audience for someone else's show? How much of it is you're like, I'm going to go listen to other shows so I can refine my craft, or I'm just watching Bravo so I can zone out and I don't want to think about things, right? There's the joy in what can I give back? Like, that's what I love about podcasting is it is getting your message out there to an audience, whether they want to listen to it, we do video, watch it, or you cut it up into any other kind of content that you want to repurpose. And now a person's able to engage with you, Kate, and what your message is, however they want to be able to do it. So for me, yeah, you kind of have to do that.
I know you listen to a lot of podcasts and you share podcasts over on LinkedIn. You like to recommend different podcasts. What are some underrated podcasts that you really love and think are awesome and most people don't know about it yet?
Um, Underrated. Look, I will go with the rated one. So my number one that I give to everyone is Mel Robbins is coaching. And I tell them like there's a reason she's now the number one podcast. She's done things incredibly right. I think I just did a post on her about what she did for her end of year recap is here's a great strategy that you guys should be looking at too that allows you to stay with inside your business, do that. So that's my number one in that regard. Outside of that, I mean, I guess first one that comes to mind is what is it? Amazing Teams, um, B2B podcast. Props to those guys. Their business is all about company culture. How do you create great teams? They just jumped into this, but I'm like, as I told them, like, you guys are doing a great job for never having hosted a podcast and bringing in good guests. It's incredibly hard to do a co-host it with a guest. So that's three voices that you're trying to handle where right now, Kate's biting your tongue going like, oh, I would love to talk. Imagine having that as your co-host is going like, oh, I want to talk, but Kate wants to talk. Like that's incredibly hard to do just from a skill standpoint, never having done that. And I think they do a really good job of getting the production, getting their message out there and tying it back to what their business cause is without ever mentioning, hey, this is what our business does. And I think that's a valuable skill that most don't do.
You know, this podcast actually started, I had a co-host when we started. And it was so funny because it was about 40 episodes in, and then he decided he just was like, "Yeah, I'm over it." Like you said, it's hard. Most people don't continue the show. And I said, "No, when we started this podcast, we said we were going to do 100 episodes. We have to at least do 100 episodes." And so I thought, oh, well, the show must go on and I'm just going to keep doing the show. But it definitely is a different feel when you have a co host and being able to do it that way. What are some of the key things that make for a great podcast?
Breaking the fourth wall is like the number one coaching tip I give to people.
Breaking the fourth wall?
Breaking the fourth wall.
Okay,
I
what do you
love it.
mean by
Like
that?
if anyone's watching or if anyone's just listening right now, you're not seeing Kim's face where it's like, or Kate's face going like, hold on, what is he talking about?
I know, I'm like, I'm waiting for you to elaborate. I'm like, breaking
Yeah.
the fourth. Right when you said that, I was like The Off.
Yes. There you go. Like The Office. My go-to, I'm from Chicago, so yeah, the accent gives it away. It doesn't give it away, but like I'm from Chicago, so I grew up Ferris Bueller, and Ferris Bueller is the greatest example
Oh,
of breaking the
yeah.
fourth wall, where he literally is talking to you. Don't feel like you're watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You are on his day off with him. Now, that was my high school. So I'm like, I'm watching him go through everything. And I'm like, oh, I am on this day off because I know all these places. But breaking the fourth wall, he does incredibly because he talks to the audience. You feel like you are there. So as a host, breaking the fourth wall is the number one tip I give to most hosts because no one wants to be a fly in the wall of a conversation. And truth be told, I will preface this like there are great shows like Diary of the CEO. He doesn't break the fourth wall, but the way he structured his show, the way he structured, you still feel like you are the questions he's asking. The way this is what I do, you feel like you connect to him, and you feel like I am him, so he doesn't have to break the fourth wall for me. But most hosts, I say breaking the fourth wall because no one wants to feel like a fly in the wall. They want to be in there. So if I said something semi-intelligent or, hey, I want to stop audience, listen, what Greg just said and sum that up, you're given the moment for anyone that's listening or anyone's watching to go, you're right. It doesn't have to be the next question. It doesn't have to be the next piece. Let's process that. Let me think about that for a second. I'm here with Kate doing that. So it changes the entire dynamic of the show and the way your audience is able to engage with you. Also then allows you to go back to how do I sell to my audience or how do I get them to like me? How do I get them to subscribe? How do I get them to take action and write a review? if you're never talking to them besides the beginning of, hey, this is my show, and the end, write me a review, and then I want you to listen, I don't feel as compelled and connected to you as I do if you were actually talking to me the whole time.
I feel like that's a skill. Because how do you break the fourth wall while at the same time having an interesting conversation that flows really well with your guests, but then also inviting the audience? It almost feels like Ferris Bueller in The Office. It's very apparent, right? They look at the camera, they make a direct comment. Whereas I think some people, what you're talking about, I was just thinking of an episode I was listening to with Tim Ferriss, and I thought, oh, I feel like I am at the table with them. They don't in any way say anything to make me feel that way in the sense of, "Hey, so you listening?" Or, so you don't want it to feel forced because I think that there is that chance that some people are almost like forcing that, like, "Hey, if you're listening and you the listener." But some people do it so well that I do feel like I'm just at the kitchen table with them having this conversation, but they haven't invited me in, but I still feel like I'm there. So I feel like that really is a practice to be able to do that well.
So there's nothing wrong with looking to the camera and going, hold on, I'm going to talk to you now as the audience. Mel does it all the time. I love it. As you said, Tim Ferriss doesn't do that, but you feel. So that's why I say the number one tip I give to people is start listening to other shows and you start observing just as you did with Tim. And if you listen to Mel, you'll start going like, what feels right to me? What feels right that I can implement for my audience? And what makes that show take away the fact that they've got the production, they're spending the money, they've invested heavily on that. What can I do as a better host? That all those other financial investments into it mean nothing. It's just being a better host.
What are some things that podcasters do that when you hear them, you just cringe? You're like, oh, no, don't like that. Pet peeve. This is not good.
I'm a big proponent. Look, I believe life is about time and relationships. And so for me, the pre-call is always going to be a good thing. So anyone that's doing this, if you were guesting on someone's show or you're starting your own show, do the pre-call. It keeps the awkwardness of like, oh, we've never met, but I followed you before and I read your book and I'm so glad you're on the show. It's like, once again, I'm a fly in the wall listening to this conversation, and that's how you're introducing your listener to the beginning of the show is the awkwardness of we've never talked, but we now get to talk right now. That always makes me cringe. I'm like, no, make me feel like you guys are already friends, even if I don't know that you aren't.
Ooh, interesting. Do you feel like you can have, if you booked a guest who you set aside 15, 20 minutes prior to pressing record, is that enough time or you think you really need like a deep dive call?
Look, some may not give it to you, right? And if that's the case, then you need to do a good job on your research beforehand to kind of build a rapport that you can already go in there and think about it. Like, why is your guest know, like, and trusting? I mean, anyone that's listening, right? Like, we know that guests come on shows for what are they selling? What is their junket? Like, there's PR components to it as well. But if we remove that from our mind, I'm bringing them on because the conversation they can have, you've got to create that connection. And so maybe it's the 15 minutes. Hey, let's do a connection beforehand. You've read their book, you've done the research, whatever it may be, but you still have to somehow get you guys connecting, get you vibing. Otherwise, yeah, it sounds either more like an interview, sounds more like a sales conversation where they're just selling their book or their wisdom. So yeah, that's what I would say.
What are your thoughts on the format, especially around so many podcasts now are on YouTube? In fact, I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere where it's iTunes and then isn't YouTube like right behind as far as where people are listening to their podcasts? I think a lot of people are finding them on YouTube now.
Um, Not to date this episode, but research just came out by one of the podcast hosting companies looking at Gen Z, saying that Spotify's number one, YouTube's number two, Apple's number three in terms of their listing platforms of choice. But video, YouTube said they've now got a billion podcast views and so forth. Video continues to be this whole big piece, and there's always concern of like, do I need to do video? Should I do video? Video is also very gender limiting in many regards. So put out the content. Don't think about these things.
What do you mean it's gender limiting for video?
All right. Well, anyone that's listening, I'm gonna try and describe this. I did my hair this morning. Took me a couple seconds, and literally right before this, I threw on a black shirt. Took me 2 seconds to get dressed, just so I could be camera ready. Normally, I'm in a hoodie, right? Kate here, gorgeous, but I'm guessing it took you a little longer to do your hair, put on makeup, put on a blouse, and so forth, right? Like there's a lot more effort for you to be camera ready than there is for me to be camera ready. And that alone is limiting because guys can go ahead, they can be camera ready pretty quickly. And so a lot of women are like, it's a lot more work for me to just get ready to be on a camera for this show. So some are like, I'd rather just be camera off and just be authentically me, not in their sweats or whatever, but like not have to go down that path. That changes everything from a camera standpoint, from a video first to a audio only. So yeah, I've seen that, I've heard that in the space. I don't know statistics in that regard, but that is things that it makes sense when you hear it.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Although I do think there is something to be said about people that, like, even, you know what, go back to Mel Robbins. I feel like she has posted a lot of things where she's just out of bed. She hasn't done her makeup. It's just so real, which is why I think a lot of people resonate with her, because it almost is like, oh, she doesn't care. She doesn't need to glam it up and do all these things. And that's kind of her brand. Whereas I have a friend of mine who does a lot of video, and she has makeup artists that come to her house and do her makeup, even if she's going to be on a webinar. So it's just different, but that's her brand. She feels more comfortable that way. So what are your thoughts on this though? My dream, Greg, is I would love to have a studio and a set. And, you mentioned Diary of a CEO. I would love it. It would be amazing. But I continue to do video like this because I actually like seeing face to face. Although I do listen to quite a few podcasts on YouTube, not watching it. But what are your thoughts around it? I guess you kind of just said it, just do it. But do you think that side by side is fine? Is it okay?
So I actually want to go back to the comment you said. Let's bring this full circle, and it will be answering to your question of like, hold on, just do it. Think about who your personality is. Do I want to be Mel and just like I get out of bed, I put on my shirt, and this is who I'm presenting to the world because this is authentically me, and just hit record, just put it out there. Record it, maybe record it, and you just put out the audio, and then maybe 3 months down the line, you're like, all right, I'm going to slowly release the video because you got out of your head. But record the video, record the audio, and you can always come back to it. But that's the biggest thing. If we go back to like, why aren't creators actually creating, or what's keeping me from posting, keeping me from writing, getting your own head of like, oh, I've got to be presentable. I've got to present this brand. It's okay if you aren't perfect. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that COVID taught us all is like, this is my house. This is who I am. Normally it'd be in an office, but like for the last 5 years, literally we were coming up on 5 years here, right? So like, yeah, this is the life we have. So it's full circle. Just go ahead, create it because you're doing it. If we stay on brand, like, do what you love. You love to share your message. It is the voice that you have. It is the ideas. It is the people that you're bringing into your world that you want to share with everyone. That's what's so cool about podcasting, but just as your show is like creating with love, like do it.
Yeah, crave for the joy of it. Greg, if you had to start a podcast today, what would it be about?
Um, it's hard to answer considering I know I don't have a show for a specific reason. So if I have to answer on this show, what would that be? I'm a relationship broker, right? So for me, it is how would I bring in a person to introduce that person to my world, my network, and go, here's this person. This is a person you should know. World, this is why you should know this person. This is his knowledge, this is what he's got. And that'd be the introduction to, I guess, to my community, to the world, so that I can ultimately drive business back to that person going, look, I'm brokering all this relationship. I'm creating this show for you. We're going to highlight your knowledge and who you are. And that's the way I would do it.
Aw, I like that. Maybe you'll have a show one day. I always ask my guests one question at the end. What is one activity that the listener can do in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative life?
Start leaving yourself voice memos. Like literally, once again, if you're not a writer, just start speaking your thoughts. Ramble what comes to your mind, because you'll be really shocked at where those ideas go. Do it on a walk outside, because you should do that for 10 minutes, right? A day at least, and start rambling your thoughts. Like that would be the easiest thing you can do, that you will start seeing what those benefits of just flexing that muscle will do.
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks everyone for listening.
I hope at least one idea inspires you to move your creative project forward. Maybe this is your opportunity to start a podcast. I love that Greg shared it's not oversaturated. There still is room in the podcasting world. If you have an idea, if there is a show that you have been itching to start, this is your opportunity. That's what I got so much about this episode. I don't know about you, but I feel like the essence was just do it. You have an idea, just do it, just try it. And what's so cool about it is you get to learn and grow while you do it. If you listen to someone's first episode, oh my gosh, I don't even want to go back to my first episode of the podcast, but from the first episode till right now, there's been a lot of growth. There's been a lot of changes and the way I approach different conversations. You just have to start. You just have to do it, whatever it is. And maybe you don't want to start a podcast. Maybe for you, it's doing YouTube videos or writing poetry or whatever your creative dream is, something that really brings you joy. This is your opportunity. It takes some discipline to be consistent in your creation process. And I talk with a lot of people who want to create more content. They want to write a book, or they really just want to start writing more, even if that means posting on LinkedIn a couple times a week. So that activity that Greg gave us to use voice memos, let's try it. I used to do that so much more often, but I stopped. I journal more often than I use my voice notes. I'm going to get back into voice recordings because it really is a fun way to flesh out your ideas and to capture some of your ideas because, those days where you have a really brilliant idea, maybe you wake up in the morning and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that idea was so good," or maybe you had a dream, "That was so weird. There's no way I'm going to forget it." And then an hour later, you totally forgot it. I hate when that happens. So use your voice notes, capture your ideas, curate them, jot them down afterwards. And hey, your next idea might be your next creative project, your next podcast episode, or your next article. If you want to connect with Greg, talk a little bit more about podcasting, or hey, you just want to reach out to him to say hi and you enjoyed this episode, the best way to connect with him is over on LinkedIn. You can go to linkedin.com/in/Greg Wasserman. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, go create something.